I hope that many of you are able to tap into that source of income for yourselves. It's a good one. How's that? Well, that's good coffee. Good morning, everyone. This is Martin, and I am up in the garden today and going to continue the series of creating sustainable income. And today I'm going to be covering the subject that for us has probably represented, well, there's no question about it, has represented the biggest amount of income over the last 13 years in our lives, and proportionally required the least amount of effort to do it. A lot of people have been waiting for this one, and I know that, so we're going to cover it today. Before we get started on it, though, if you could, hit the subscribe button down below, the notification bell, turn the notifications to all, and we'll get right into this. So, the one thing that has created the most amount of income for us over the last more than a decade has been nightly cabin rentals. And you've heard me, I'm sure, talk about it, or many of you have, on other videos where I kind of lump it in together with the campsite rental. And so the two of them, while they're still both considered to be nightly rentals, they're a total different approach and a mindset with them, and a total different type of investment. And so the cabin rentals obviously have created the most amount of income, and proportionally with the least amount of effort, but they also have the biggest expense when it comes to the investment on them as well. Where the reason I kind of really encourage people to consider the campsite rentals, if you're going to go into that nightly rental business, is because the investment of that, especially if you already have the land, the investment that it requires to get started on something like that is so much smaller and achievable for more people than the cabin rentals are. Now, when we got started with our cabin rentals, we basically purchased a little property that had 4 broken down cabins on it that were not livable. And we moved on to that property, and for the first year we ended up getting one of them renovated, and then after that, the next year I think we had 2 more of them renovated. We didn't do it at a real fast pace, we just sort of did it as we could afford it. And because the cabins were in such bad shape when we bought them, they were very affordable as well. And so I would say if you have the skills to do renovations, then that's a much more economical or affordable way to get into cabin rentals, is to buy things that need to be rehabbed, which is what we did. We did that on several cabins beyond those first 4, but then we got to where we were building some cabins too that were nicer, and so the skills still applied, and we were able to build cabins that actually created even greater income, when we were building them from scratch, because we were taking the original cabins were sort of built probably in the 50s, maybe even in the 40s. And they were very small and compact, and didn't have the possibility of having modern amenities in them as much. I mean, we put modern kitchens and things like that in, but they were just small. And so the cabins we built were more to today's taste, and so they did much better. And I had heard somewhere along the line, I had heard someone say that if your cabin units aren't making you $10,000 a year, you need to tear them down and start over again. And we weren't making that kind of money on those early ones, and I couldn't even really see how that was even possible with those, because I mean, I was getting $5,000 to $7,000 a piece out of them annually, out of each one of them. And I just really couldn't hardly see a way to, increase the price in a way or attract more people to them that would achieve that. When we started building them, and I mean, they were not a lot bigger, but they were laid out better and just had a better feel to them. And then, I mean, some of those newer ones not only hit that 10,000 per year mark, but some of them even quadrupled that amount. And so it was kind of amazing to me just exactly how much more productive that they would be. Now, I can't really go into telling you exactly step by step how to do it, because honestly, every place is going to have different rulings on how they govern that kind of a thing. Now, where we were at, we're in Southwest Missouri, and in Missouri, I discovered that I couldn't figure out why these little properties had 4 cabins on them. And there was a lot of places around that were like that. They had, all they had was 4. Well, I came to find out later that 4 was the sort of the threshold limit on where you didn't fall under the authority of the local health departments and have to go through all of the inspections and all of that every year. Once you go to 5 or more, then you fell under their jurisdiction, and you had to follow their guidelines and be inspected every year. And we did have some properties that had more than 4 cabins on them later on in the lifespan of what we were doing there. And so I did have to go through a number of properties where we did inspections every year, and we always, it's like any other inspectors, they always find something. So we were always doing something to bring things up to the passable inspection. And so that was just one thing. But I would say that there are things that you're going to have to check in your local area on who governs that sort of a thing, because every place is different, and that's just what we found. Now, we had done a variety of different marketing with those, and we did private. I built a website, and we did that to market them, which worked fine. We also did for a time on some of them, we marketed them through Airbnb. And that is so much easier, especially if you are only doing anywhere up to maybe 10 of them or something like that. I would definitely do something like Airbnb, because they take a lot of the work out of doing that kind of a business. Their marketing is second to none. Nothing that you can do is ever going to even come close to matching what you can achieve through Airbnb as far from a marketing point of view. They will put your units in front of the world, okay? And and their search engine just really will help people hone in on your place. They can search it by location, by size, by number of people it sleeps, by I said location already, by the price. They can search by anything that they want, and if you match their search, you'll pop up on their radar. So I would definitely do that. Their cost is, from a host's point of view, is very minimal. I think I mentioned this on the other video on the campsite rentals, is that I paid 3% roughly for my credit card processing fees when I processed someone's credit card to make a reservation. And Airbnb, their total charge to me was 3%, and they handled all of the fees. So to me, it was an even wash. It cost me exactly the same whether I did it or whether they did it, and they didn't have any other fees to me. Most of the other fees went to the renter, and for cleaning fees and just processing fees and stuff like that Airbnb charged. And people don't seem to mind to pay it. I mean, they do. They just have come to expect it, I believe. And so I've never had anybody ever question the fees that Airbnb charge. Of course, nobody likes to pay extra fees, but they've all become accustomed to the fact that there's fees involved. And so I would definitely do that. If you get more than 10, you may still go to Airbnb or one of those other platforms like that. I like Airbnb best because they own half the other ones anyway. So when you hook up with them, they basically cover you broadly across the entire spectrum of those rental platforms. Nothing wrong with the other ones. It's just that, and I forgot to mention too on the campsite rental thing, I meant to mention it on that video, is there's places like Hip Camp that focus in on campsites. So there's that. If you decide to go watch that one, because getting into the cabin thing might be too expensive to start with right now. So anyway, that's that. And so with our cabin rentals, they still sustain us for most of what we do down here on our property. And so the video is built kind of around how do you create income to help support your off-grid or homestead or whatever kind of a life. And most of you that have already started that kind of a life, you have a piece of property already, and if you can integrate some of those things into, you know, the income production that you have on your property, then, you know, it's less income that you have to try to chase down someplace else. And, you know, I've got cousins that have that are thinking about building some cabins on their place. They've got 100 acres up north of here, a couple 100 miles, and they had built an off-grid cabin down by a big pond on their property years ago. And they were worried that, you know, because there was no electricity there or anything like that, that they may not be able to really rent that. And I disagreed with them on that. Because there is a certain amount of people that's going to fit whatever you have, no matter what you have. There's a certain amount of people that's going to fit the rustic, primitive camping. So when you end up having your property out in front of people like that, they will rent that. And the same is going to be true for off-grid type cabins. There's people that want to experience something like that. If you do it well, you can't make it so difficult that that an average person couldn't come in and do that and experience that. But if you do it well enough to where they can, then there's going to be a market for that. I'm a believer that there's a market for nearly everything. It's just you got to get it in front of the right people, and Airbnb does that. I mean, they have categories set up so that they can get that in front of people. So, you know, that's a step in the right direction, because quite so much infrastructure that you have to worry about. You know, probably the best, highest paying cabins are the more luxury ones that we've built. And there's something moving around up there in the woods. Can't quite see what it is. But anyway, the more luxury ones that we build are obviously the higher paying ones. They require the more attention. But we've gone from, you know, having a couple of cabins that my wife and I could operate solely 100% on our own, and that includes everything from the marketing on through to the maintenance, to the housekeeping and everything else we did ourselves. We actually grew it to the point where we had enough of them that we couldn't keep up with it. So we really had to hire housekeepers to start with, was the ones that we needed to go for first, because we were just tired of doing the housekeeping on them. Now, we ended up selling one of the properties several years ago that had, I think, 7 cabins on it. And the people that bought that, you know, to us, it was too much work to do the housekeeping on it. To them, they saw that as a, you know, where we were paying somewhere close to $20,000 a year just for housekeeping services on those 7 cabins. They saw that $20,000 as an additional $20,000 that they could put in their pocket if they did the housekeeping themselves, which is really the way we started out too. We just reached a point where we had enough of them that we couldn't keep up with the housekeeping ourselves, so we had to hire it out. So in a way, I mean, we ended up creating jobs for other people that could make income for other people. Or if you have kids that want to do that, you know, that could give them some income too, and just keep the income in the family. But however you decide to do that, you know, that's entirely up to you. The more income you make, you know, the more decisions like that you have to make on how you're going to manage and operate those sort of things. So anyway, you know, I could go into it in much more detail, but the video would be 5 hours long, and I don't want to do that. So so I'm just going to say that on our video channel, okay, I started a series way back, probably almost 3 years ago, on how we built up our cabin rental business. And we called them resorts because the first one we bought was a small resort. The second one we bought was an old resort as well that needed to be rehabbed. And so we called it the Resort Adventures back then. And so if you go onto our channel and look for a playlist called the Resort Adventures, you will find where we really kind of break down the step-by-step process of how we started building that cabin rental business, and it really has done very well for us. And there's still a lot of room in even with the economy being as stupid and as weird as it is, we've noticed a little bit of a drop off on the nightly rental business just because costs are so high. of everything, fuel and travel, and all of the things that relate to that, even the entertainment. When people come here and they want to spend some time going to see something, that's more expensive. So we've noticed a little bit of a drop off, but not near enough to make it not worth it. I mean, it really is. It's a business that once it gets established, it really does continue to run. And the cabins where we're at will run pretty much year round. The campsite rental won't, because it gets cold enough in the wintertime that it won't. But the cabins do. So you know, there's a lot that goes into them. I mean, I'll say one thing about the cabin rentals that we could go into again in 2 days worth of depth on, is that when you do it, you have to make it appealing to people. You have to make it more than just a bed and a pillow, a place for them to sleep at night. You have to make the experience be one that they look forward to, that they enjoy while they're there, and then when they leave, they want to come back. And if you can create that kind of an environment, that kind of an experience, then you'll do well in them. And I don't think it really matters where you're at. If you can make it appealing enough, there will be people there that will be happy to rent those things just as a getaway. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Again, look up that playlist, The Resort Adventures, because we really do go through detail, step by step, on how we started and got going. And really, we started with no money. It was even some of that is in there, how we finance things with no money in our pockets. So you'll find that. I hope it's of value. I hope you find some value in this. I hope that many of you are able to tap into that source of income for yourselves. It's a good one, and we're not jealous of other people getting in and doing this. I mean, there's enough to go around for everybody. So anyway, I hope you found some value in it. If you could, again, hit the subscribe button and notification bell. We'll see you next time. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and a share, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the notification bell. See you next time.